Okay, so another major scalp has gone at Dismal Minus. Um, but I'm still asking the question, are the right heads rolling? And who will be taking over all of these positions? Let's talk about this and another and the major Marvel scalp um, after the scroll. Bonjour. So, the news, the latest, hot off the press that we're all revelling in, is that Alicia Schwartz, Senior Vice President and Chief Compliance Officer, a major scalp, like one of the top, they need to save billions of dollars. And Bob Iger has sat at his stall saying, we've got to save 5.5 billion, I think it is, and 3 billion of that is going to be from content creation. Yeah, look, it's 7,000 jobs are going at Walt Disney Company. Now, I know we're all revelling in this. We're kind of saying, yeah, boo, boo, you know, yah, boo sucks to Dismal Minus. But do you know what? A lot of the people that are going to be getting laid off with huge consequences for their family and etc., and for themselves, they're not the people, by and large, the majority of these people working for this corporation didn't do anything wrong. That's the first thing I would say. Alicia Schwartz, I mean, she started there in 2014. I've never heard the name. But somehow it's big news, and I can't help feeling that there's a kind of joyous celebration in these layoffs that I do think, and listen, I'm the last one to be telling everyone to calm down, especially after my last video. But I think we need to pause a moment. And I've asked this question before when we found out about Victoria Alonso. Like, who's going to take over her job? It could be worse. You know, it'd have to go a long way, but it could be worse. And Dismal Minus are a long way from admitting their mistakes at the moment and getting some different type of content going, some different kind of corporate structure and workplace ethos to correct their trajectory. I mean, it is going to be like turning an oil tank around in the ocean. It will not happen overnight. It will be a long and arduous process. It's got to start with the layoffs, obviously, but like I say, sadly, you know, this woman had been there from 2014. Her job has been amalgamated with someone else. So someone else has got to work twice as hard doing her job. And also, so they're getting rid of 7,000 people. Look at the people, and you'll know the names. Look at the people right at the top that have sent this company, that have lost them money and fans, lifelong fans, people that just loved Disney and everything they did. You know, Disney was the thing they loved. Not just one or two films within it, not one franchise like Marvel or one franchise like Star Wars. They loved Disney. They opened shops that when my children were younger, we would go into to buy merchandise of Disney characters when it was top of the shop for merchandise, and a pair of Spider-Man pajamas, a pair of little princess slippers, whatever it was, and on and on and on and on and on. Merchandise was a big thing, wasn't it? You know, a Mickey Mouse mug or Donald Duck. These icons, these global icons, instantly recognisable across the language barrier, across the world. And now look at what they've done. Not these 7,000 people getting laid off. I know there's going to be people out there that go, such is life. Yeah, I get that. And I'm not here to kind of get the violin out for them. But I think they should be mentioned. Now, this Alicia Schwartz, she was obviously on a good on a good whack at Disney. Don't get me wrong, and those more expensive heads are going to be looked at first. They can't really do a lot with the theme parks because he's only around the corner, and they are going to need. They can't fail there, and that has been one of the things that is hanging on and profitable. It's over here with the streaming service particularly that's lost heavy. The movies are losing heavy and breaking even. And if rumours are to be believed, Iger has dragged Kathleen Kennedy in, one of the big names, whose head should really be on the block. What has she done? Yeah, that's another video for another day once her head rolls, because I'm pretty sure it's going to roll. She's been dragged into the office. If rumours are to be believed, this isn't only a rumour, that Iger has said about Indiana Jones 5, which I think is going to be her swan song, but this is just my opinion, and this is just a rumour that I have heard on the internet and looking around and watching a few videos, that she has been told this film must make money. It must make money. It must earn profit. Because Bob Iger, he can't start steering this corporation into profit without these big tentpole movies that have cost hundreds of millions. This is the thing. This isn't just like a $50 million movie that hasn't got to do a lot to earn its money back and earn a small profit for smaller companies. These corporations, they need to be. I remember when they said it cost how much it cost to do the last two Avengers films, with just Robert Downey Jr.'s wages being $50 million. Again, a lot of it was here, so I don't know if that was ever confirmed. They filmed them back to back, those last two Avengers films, and the cost was hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. But they earned big bucks back. They rolled the dice. Well, at that point, I would say it was not a sure bet. There's no such thing. But they deserve all those films leading up to Endgame and those last two. They deserve their success because they built on it. They had delivered. They really did deliver for the fans and the wider global audience that they needed to earn the billions that they got back. Billions. Since it would literally, what an apt name for the last movie, the last properly good movie they made, Endgame. When you think about it. The other scalp that went this week, and I know this isn't new news, but this is linked. So Alicia Schwartz, she ain't done nothing wrong. Neither has Ike Perlmutter. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Now, I'd never heard of him. I'll put my hands up. Never heard of him till I heard that he's gone. Now, he was on Marvel's board of directors, this guy. Do you remember back in the days when you would see the name Avi Arad on the Marvel movies? I never remember seeing Isaac Perlmutter. I do remember seeing Avi Arad. These two guys were on the board of Marvel. Now, Ike from 1995. And they went bankrupt in 96, Marvel. Don't know if any of you know the kind of the history of Marvel back then. That they were on their knees. And it was the film franchising that kind of dug them out. You know, those early films, you know, The Blade and X-Men and maybe Daredevil, because that first Daredevil film earned money. But that's just me thinking off the top of my head. But it was the film rights that generated the revenue that pulled them out of the gutter. And Ike and Avi Arad, they kind of took it over out of the bankruptcy. And then until obviously Walt Disney bought them out in 2000 and 2009. Now, this Ike Perlmutter, he earned $800 million in cash. Now, it was his company to sell. He had steered it through bankruptcy, so fair enough. And he had $590 million. This is the funny bit. He got paid $590 million in Disney stock options. Now, I hope he got shot of them, because that $590 million probably ain't even worth, don't get me wrong, it's still a good old chunk of change. It's probably only worth that, not even 100 million now. Because their shares are tanking hard. They just can't get above $1 level at the moment. $1 a share. And they was going for a lot more in years gone by, as you can imagine. They're not the only one. I know Netflix shares, and a few of the others, but they've all rallied. They've all come round and sorted themselves out. Dismal are still in the toilet. So what I found interesting was that, so he has sold Marvel to Walt Disney, but he stayed on. He didn't want to be on a board of directors at Disney, but he wanted to run Marvel Studios. Right, fine. And he did up until 2015 when he had a run-in with good old Kevin Feige. And in 2015, Bob Iger took the decision, because what Feige was basically saying, and this is common knowledge, you can fact check this. Feige was basically saying that he was frustrated with Perlmutter because of his way of doing business. Like, he wasn't bothered about diversity and inclusion. He was bothered about running a company at a profit. That doesn't mean you've got to be insulting to people. But Feige saw it a different way. Now, isn't this interesting that the Endgame comes along in 2018, 19, and Mutter is pushed out of the film division, not the rest of it, not merchandise and comics and all that. And then I think this is an interesting timestamp for us to contemplate. And Feige's got his hands on the lot now. And look what happened post-Endgame. With all the diversity and inclusion and the agenda-driven political nonsense that they've injected into these films unnecessarily, in my opinion. And, well, the fans have not put their bum on any seats, or not many. It's proving it now. So it's not just me. It's not just me and my opinion. This is numbers. This is adding up. This is objectively Feige's new vision, once he's got Perlmutter out of the way, for Marvel, has not worked. Has not worked at all. And they seem to be doubling down on it. By saving 5.5 billion and not having these films necessarily need to earn a lot of money, when you get rid of people like Perlmutter, this is how, and again, this is my opinion, this is when people's business head isn't properly aligned with the corporation they're in. Because I think they're prepared to make cheaper films with the same agenda they've been spewing for a little bit less profit, but at a profit. Let's see if I'm right. Over these ones that they've actually got going, let's see what nonsense they carry on producing instead of listening to people like Perlmutter that have got a business head on, but are obviously knee deep in it. This man took the company out of bankruptcy. He didn't do it by asset stripping and selling bits off and splintering the company. He done it by selling off the film franchises. And those first few Marvel films, when they was literally crawling out and blinking into the daylight of the cinema universe, they weren't bad films. In fact, looking back on some of them, they look like some of the best films ever made compared to some of the dross we get now. The absence of people like Perlmutter, is only going to see if people like Feige, Kathleen Kennedy continue to rule their respective roosts. Nothing is going to change. Not one bit is going to change. They're doubling down on this. They are doubling down on it because they are not giving any indication. Something like John Wick 4 comes along, or Maverick, and are objectively telling every filmmaker out there that the male gaze, the male attention, the male fan is something to be embraced, because he's the one that manages to either drag his family to the cinema, or wants to drag his family to the cinema, or his girlfriend, or his wife, or all of them. Not necessarily, I know John Wick 4 isn't a good example. I think Maverick is a better example. But they just don't, you would think if you had a business, in any other walk of life, in any other normal business, you'd look at, if you had a coffee shop and you looked at the coffee shop across the road, and your Peruvian brand of $18 a cup coffee wasn't selling, but the bloke over the road was selling, he was selling Brazilian brand for $4 a cup, and he had a queue around the block every day at lunchtime and breakfast time. Wouldn't you think, I might be doing something wrong here? But Dismal don't. They're doubling down on the political agenda, so let's see where that one goes. But I'm just thinking it's interesting that these big heads are rolling. But as a corporation, you could now save a lot of money getting rid of Feige and Kennedy. And Kennedy, I think she's on thin ice with Indy 5. And that is why it's been reshot. I mean, apparently there has been 8 weeks of reshoots. Apparently Harrison Ford has been on call throughout that whole time, throughout that entire session of reshoots. 8 weeks. Now, I know a big complicated film like these don't get made in 8 weeks, but you can make a movie in 8 weeks. Not with heavy special effects on it, don't get me wrong, but you can film an entire movie. Obviously, you need more time for pre-production and that, post-production, sorry, and a little bit for pre-production for it. But I'm talking about the shoot. An 8-week shoot is a long while to get, a 5-day week for 8 weeks, 40 days. So, 8 hours a day. How much footage do you need? Do you see what I mean? Unless you're shooting one scene a day, which is pathetic. And this is where it all gets lost. And the budget on Indies is over 200 million. Plus your marketing, etc., etc. That's got to earn. That's got to kind of earn. God knows what. Let's see when it comes out. And anyway, let's see how it does. And let's hope these reshoots save the day, because as much as I'm saying about feedback that's coming in from particularly John Wick, and that's coming through Maverick and a couple of other films, is that that when you appeal to men with your film, you're going to earn some dough. It's still got to be a good film, don't get me wrong, but that's the fundamental of it. That's the fundamental. And with Disney, they're still not learning. And I'm pretty sure they've got all the facts and figures right up the wazoo that shows them the demographic of the audience that they used to have, the demographic they're specifically aiming for now, excludes the demographic that made them so huge. Why would you ignore that? I know what we'll do. We're losing money. Let's sack the people that work for us. And carry on headbanging. And they are only going to carry on headbanging as long as Feige and Kennedy are there. And, even across the road, the other side of the street, Zaslav. Now, I know he's sweeping the board. This year, or in 2022, last year, he earned $39 million. The year before, though, he earned, this is combined, this is money, this is a bit of cash, and this is stock options and all the rest of it, all the gobbledygook they give you. He earned the year before $249 million. What's Feige and Kennedy on? An Iger. But they've got to say $5.5 billion and 7,000 people have got to lose their jobs. There we go. A little quote from Bob Iger, which I found interesting as well, from 11 years ago. So 2012, he done an interview with UCLA, and the question was, why do you think leaders fail? And his one word answer was arrogance. Pathetic, isn't it? And ironic, as someone once sung. And he followed it up with, power can go to your head. Well, I can think of two people that are still working for him. Yeah, that if he believed in the words he spoke 11 years ago, and he still maintains that in his business life, he knows what heads have got to roll. He knows. The only thing I can think of is that they have got too much on him, because it was all in the early days, and especially with political agenda and his politics as well. I know he was going to go for a Democratic governorship. I don't know American politics, so forgive me if I got that wrong. Not an American. I don't know whether it's a senator or a governor, whatever it is in America. And that is when there was a very, and I don't often get this political, but just bear with me with this one detail. Because, all right, a Democrat, and he's got to be, an uber Democrat, let's say, to get voted, and he's CEO of Walt Disney. Now, don't you think that would give him enough cachet for votes? His background in business and running this wholesome, family-friendly company. What went wrong? And God knows why he did it. But he then decides to steer his ship, not just keep it there, which I think would have been fine, because there's been a little bit of, you could read politics in every Disney film that's ever been made, to be fair, but they really did steer clear of it, and then suddenly it has veered far left, too far left, and now the company's got to be the flag waver for every silly agenda that comes along. Actually, forgive me, I'm going to retract that. They're not silly agendas. In the real life, in the real world, they aren't silly. It's the impacts on people's lives involving very serious subjects, and, racism, equality. These are all good. These are all good belief, for me, are all good belief systems to have in real life and fight for those kind of things. When it infects entertainment for the wrong reasons, then that's when it all falls down. And it's dangerous because people see what they used to love being destroyed by these agendas. Now you're making them anti whatever agenda it is that you're waffling on about. It doesn't work. It's not right. It's not right. One little example is race swapping. Previously popular characters, when you race swap them, that is not equality, because whatever height that popularity was at, you are lowering that to suit a level. It's not levelling up. You need to create whatever race you've swapped, the race that you've just foisted upon a franchise that's been doing very well over there on its own for years. You should be creating, and the creators, your company, should be providing a space for the creation of heroes of certain races, creeds, colours, religion. That's what your corporation be doing, not just plucking everything you used to do and turn it a different colour or paint it with a rainbow. It doesn't work, because you're destroying everything that people loved about your company. That doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense, but I just do find it interesting. Hit me up in the comments if I've kind of tickled your fancy and there's any views you've got, because I know that was a lot of opinion. That's where I am, and I do find it interesting, because it's all the stuff I grew up loving. It's the films that I used to take my children to. They're being spoiled. They just seem to want to follow this headbanging agenda. and it's not to make money. And Ike Perlmutter, his exit, really, really, if we're all cheering, and I know we're all enjoying the descent of Dismal and ha ha, you know, they're getting their just desserts, but I'd rather see the proper heads roll and have a complete turnaround. That's what I'd like to see, but we're not. We're not. Hard-working people, majority of these people, I'd like to think are hard-working people. Otherwise, they wouldn't have got to the heights they got without all these people working hard. They're paying for the mistakes of a handful of people right at the top. Well, there's been one good scout, don't get me wrong. Victoria Alonso, I'm going to say good riddance. That's a good one. Let's see who replaces her or where her job has to go. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. And let me know what you think. Give me a like or subscribe if you fancy it, if you're up for it. Really does help, and I really do appreciate everyone who does so. Thank you. And I will bid you adios.